You spend a lot of time and resources hiring the best talent, but 3 months, 6 months down the line, they're gone. What's really broken? Is it the talent, the system, or is it leadership? Today, let's talk about talent retention. And of course, you're welcome to join us on Workplace Whispers with the MD CEO of Strategic Outsourcing Limited, Dr. Olufemi Ogunlowo. And joining us on this conversation table is the MD CEO of Gopso Global Limited, Uche Nwachuku Njoko. And of course, my name is Praise Mba. You're welcome again on Workplace Whispers.
Thank you so much for coming. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, we look forward to having a conversation that will help someone out there manage their people better.
Yeah.
And so you said, why are people leaving?
Exactly. The problem with talent retention. Is there even a problem to start with talent retention? Is there something going on? Is it a leadership problem? Is it the system? Or is it the talent that just don't want to stay or work anymore? Like people say, maybe youth don't want to work anymore these days.
Maybe you want to go first.
All
All right, it's okay. So first and foremost is, what's talent? So are we simply saying retention of employees? Because, a lot of times we use buzzwords and we say talent. There are jobs that require talent and there are jobs that really just requires people to show up to get them done, right? And I can give examples of such. Even though you may require certain skills, it's not everything that is talent. And so when you worry about talent, you're truly talking about certain levels of roles. But overall, if we are talking about attrition in the workplace, so with this, distinguish these two things. You can have attrition in the workplace and yet have retention of talent because the way you've designed the organization favors talents such that talents are staying, but regular like even we talk about artisans, for instance, you talk about skilled artisans, you talk about skilled artisans. It doesn't matter to me today who shows up to lift blocks from first floor to the second floor on the construction site, right? Unskilled labor. But it matters to you the person who is doing the dressing of the window because you want it all squared. So you want that bricklayer who did the dressing yesterday to show up today to continue it, but any other person can serve him with the mortar that needs to do the work. And so the distinction I'm trying to make is attrition does not necessarily affect talent retention because we are separating talent from high-valued work or workers. So, with that distinction being made, we could then argue that where the conditions of employment are right, people will stay. Now, what is right? Right means it's just conducive for those who have those jobs. But where those conditions are not right, people are always migrating to greener pastures. So whether you have the best of opportunities, it's a function of those who are also seeking them. Because you have, even in SOL recently, we have had people who have stayed with us 18 years move to Canada, right? Because comparative, they move to greener pastures. And so my own summary will be that the conditions must be right for the employer and the conditions must be right for the employee to then have a stable work environment.
To that, I would say, do you think that there is an issue with talent retention, just like Dr. Oglo has said, or?
To align with what he has said, there's an issue with talent retention. And I would say to you that managing talent entirely is a business process, right? And it's a business process that brings about solution to an identified need of an organization. So it's not that people just open doors and have people walk in. No, there was a need identified and then there's a desired solution. Now, organizations can retain talent. Nigerian young people are ready to work. They are great talent. one of the challenges we find within organizations is that they have the wrong culture that are not people-minded. And people-mindedness is a major challenge in talent retention. And I say this, you may come to organizations that have beautiful write-ups on the walls. People are the greatest assets. They have beautiful visions and missions and values, but their culture doesn't speak same in action. So you find people come in because they have gone to your page and they read and saw, this company is a place to be. And they came in within the shorted period, they found out that what they saw on paper is different from what they have. And so you find people being deployed to units where there are faulty leadership. You have organizations with culture that bullies people, very horrible kind of, culture. Now, when you say people are your greatest asset, check other assets that add to your productivity and performance. How well do you manage them? So if you take, for instance, other assets you have in the organization, let's say cars, you have a fleet management company, and you have drivers, you have fleet managers, you have other staff. How do you manage your cars? You make sure that your cars are serviced as and when due. You fuel them, you keep them well so that they are usable. Now, the people that manage these cars, you find organizations not living up to expectation in making people remain. Nigerian talent, and thankfully, the young people, they have options. They have options. They are left with a lot of options in the employment space. So if you bring in young talents, you have a responsibility to manage them to stay. Otherwise, they will leave you, and gladly so. They will leave you because, Nigerian young people are not ready to get bullied in the office, for instance. You have a culture that bullies them. You have a culture that is so toxic that they can't relax. Now, when you are talking about organizational growth, it's also a two-way thing. An organization can't be talking about their growth from this talent that has been hired. Of course, at the point he's joining, you have your targets, you have everything lined out. We expect that this guy will do this ABC in 6 months. Now, you don't have a plan to say this guy will grow into social role. He's coming in as a young graduate. Sure. Yeah. This is what we have in plan. So it's a structural thing. If you have a need, you have to have a plan. The same way you have a budget for his salary, have a plan for his growth, have a plan for his, sustainability and his stay. And that way he's retained in your business.
So, again, for me, it's a struggle usually when we use certain kinds of words to describe simple things. Now, what do I mean by that? I know your question has been on talent management, and I just really want to be sure that it's clear that we are talking about high valued, because there are certain roles within your organization that retention is not critical, right? And there are roles where you want retention that is critical. And I can give examples, and I don't want to demean any job role, which is why I'm trying to avoid giving specific examples. But there are roles where length of time on the job does not improve you. There are roles where the longer you stay on the job, you really aren't going to have ladders to climb. I don't want to mention specific roles, but let's step back. And I'm going to share an experience of what we had here 10 years ago. In SOL, we have a policy where the organization pays the school fees of any staff that joins us as a non-graduate. So we pay their school fees to go to the university as part-time students when they are here. So for instance, if the person was a T-boy or T-girl or recruited as a cleaner, or guard or whatever, and without a tertiary education, of course, for that role, then the organization will pay for the university education. And when the person graduates, will be admitted or, absorbed into graduate level roles. Now, we had a young lady who was with us, and the policy is within 3 years of joining, you should have enrolled in the university, because many people are not going further, sometimes because of cost. All right. So we try to identify some those who need education, but who are unable to afford it, and so we bring them into the workplace. They are working and they are schooling. So they have economic power and they are receiving also education. Now, this young lady joined us, and after the third year, she had not enrolled in any program. She was 10 years in the role as that she was recruited into at that time, whether it's a girl or cleaner. I can't remember exactly which one it was. And unfortunately, we had to say, you know what, you had the opportunity to go to university. All of those who joined at the same time as you were employed, they have become graduates, they have been given roles. Why are you not taking it? Okay, you have 1 or 2 more years to seek to do this, otherwise we would have to determine your role. And now, why am I saying this? Retention is good, but it's not every role that requires long-term retention. Because when you have those kind of roles, especially roles that we call, in quotes, jobs, where you do the same thing every day and you can do the same thing every day for the next 35 years.
Like routine jobs.
I don't want to, clarify as routine or not. But a clear example would be, let's say, office
Assistant.
clerk or office, the person that you call and say, go and make photocopy, admin assistant, as an example.
Yeah.
Somebody comes in as admin assistant. If he doesn't improve himself, he will remain in that role. And he could be in that role for 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. Being in that role for 20 years, 25 years, 10 years doesn't improve the organization, because the person doesn't add any more value. In fact, the person is going to be a burden on the system, because you brought in someone as a 22-year-old, 18-year-old boy to be making photocopies, and he's now 40 years old. He's still making those photocopies, and he has family, he has needs, he has higher financial needs. How much money do you want to pay for that role? It's limited. So ultimately, if that person doesn't improve themselves so that you can bump them up into a supervisory role where they are now dealing with 10 people who are making photocopies, as an example, then you are stuck. I don't want to retain that person.
I mean, we've talked about a lot here, right? We've moved now to the talent themselves,
Yes.
because if you don't work on yourself, there's no way that the system can absorb you fully.
Yes, but people can still be helped. And I give an example. I worked in an organization where I wasn't given, the guy was there before I joined. He had worked as an admin assistant, like you said, for 10 to 12 years before I joined the business in that location. Now, so they assigned him to be my admin assistant at the point. And so I asked him, what do you do? He said he makes tea, he photocopies. And at that time, we had stopped making teas for people. In fact, all managers, they'll give you all your tea. Even non-managers, you can go to the tea room and make your tea. So part of that job is cut off. Now they said photocopies. It's not everything you photocopy. You can scan, you can do anything, you can send forward to mails. So what did I do when I came? And this guy is quite one smart guy like that. So I had to meet. Now that's why I recommend most organizations should have some people management skills for all their managers, all their unit heads, all the major line managers. And that reminds me, there was an HR event that we had, and there were awards given. The person that won the best HR manager award was an MD of an organization that was purely an engineer. He had never had any HR training. Yeah. So, but what he did was he found out that he bought that very beautiful whatever on our walls that say people are the best assets and people are the greatest assets. So he said, how do I handle my greatest asset? So he devised a plan that allows him to go for trainings, HR trainings, at least once a year, 1 or twice a year, despite the fact that he is from engineering background. So what I did was to identify this guy as a good talent, regardless, where he's coming from, his background. So I spoke to him first. I said, you have to go back to school. And he accepted. He said, but if I go back to school, will they retain me? I said, yes. Now, what did I do again? I worked with the HR to improve his job. I gave him, there are jobs to be done. And that, again, I say, it's a foundational thing. It's a cultural thing. And it's from the point of bringing in people. Don't bring in people for the now. Bring in people for the nearest future. You have been doing this particular thing. What next after here? What next for you? Right? And that has to be decided by the organization culturally. And this is like a way of life. So because I know the organization too is big on people development to a large extent, when I brought the idea, we all sat and said, okay, we have to increase his job. First of all, get him a laptop. We got him a laptop. So I told him, these are the reports you must be giving me every Friday. So he goes out of his way to ensure that everybody does what will make him give his report. Another level of responsibility. So from there, he enrolled into Unilag, he started going to school. And before he left that organization, he was already like an executive. Do you get? So I don't also buy the idea that people can stay in one particular role for 30 years doing the same thing. Not when I'm someone like me. Is that no, it won't work that way. There are jobs to be done. Instead of hiring new people, I'll grow you into the role I want you to take over. And that's, again, organizations should be mindful of how they manage their people. What training plans do you have before you bring me in? And that's why these Gen Zs in our organization now, the place I sit in, GOPSA Global Limited, each time you want to employ somebody, they tell you, please, ma, I want to know my growth plan. Do you have a training plan? Young people, and they are not afraid of asking you. If you say you don't have, they'll work out on you. To us managers now, so for me now, before I put out a role to advertise a role or to look for that talent, I have the growth path, I have my training plans. Because organizations are quick to just close out on salary budgets and that's all. And meanwhile, every other thing that person needs to stay should also be budgeted for.
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, the budget for managing the staff is not just the salary of the staff. What about the trainings? What about the healthcare? What about things outside of work that you need to provide for them? Some instances we've seen organizations provide transformers for senior managers and so on because they want them to be comfortable and to be able to do the work without having to. Exactly. Yeah. But again, that's at the highest level of executive management. But back to the workshop floor, right? Why do you want people to stay in your organization? So why did Lionel Messi or stay in Barcelona for a long period of time of his career? And you've also had talented footballers who have moved from one club to the other. So there must be a reason why you want people to stay. Now, if people are staying, it means that there is also no room for others. So it's a real question you have to ask yourself. Do you have a situation whereby if one person is in this role and stays in that role, it does not limit the organization itself from growth? Because if the organization is not growing and certain people are there, they will outgrow the organization and then they have to find something else to do. So to have retention means you must have growth. And so the management, the business owners must plan for growth, not just only plan for managing people, because you can't really manage people giving them the same thing to do, especially if you call them talent, day in, day out. And that's why if your talented footballer stays with you when you get relegated, there must be something else there because he moves. So for us to have retention, there must be both internal capacity and space so people can grow into bigger roles within the organization and they stay longer with you.
And one thing I like about the show is that I get to sit here and I get to hear different sides, and I also get to learn because I'm looking at myself 10 years from now and seeing how put all these strategies to play. Most importantly, now we've talked about, because we've had people here who've gone online and see people that work in places for 30 years and they're still working there. Right. So the question now is, what does growth look like in today's work economy? What does loyalty look like? Because some people stay in a place and then they get complacent. They stay, what does it look like?
Let's forget about growth in just a word, because you can have empty growth. So let's talk about real growth. And let me give you an example. If you started your job on a salary of 100,000 naira, these are just hypotheticals, and you stayed on that job and you are now receiving 250,000 naira after 30 years, right? You could say there was growth of 150,000 in your pay. But over that 30 years, if you look, let's even assume that it went to 600,000, whatever it is, doing exactly the same job, you'll find out that you have diminished significantly. Significantly. Because inflation is not growth. So if all you have been having is inflation adjustment in your salaries or earnings, you haven't grown. And how do you know if you have grown? You have grown only, no, maybe not only, if you could actually see that you are doing more. If you are not doing more, you haven't grown. So if the only yardstick we are looking at is wages, then many people, sorry to say, haven't grown. Because yes, we have had inflation adjustments in salaries. Let's take the minimum wage, as an example. It went from 30 to 70. Okay, that's 40%, right? No, sorry, 40,000. But I'm not speaking to that. You have to ask yourself, you have had 40,000 increment in your salary, but have you had equivalent increment in your purchasing power?
It's a huge one. It's a huge one, actually.
So, what's growth and what's retention?
So I'd like to hear your take on that as well.
Maybe I would have sat back to give my experience for 21 years in my past employment, So I can say that there was growth. Yeah. And when you talk about growth, like Mr. Femi was trying to say, growth is not only for the talent you claim you have. So when you're looking at yourself as, having achieved some growth for yourself and for the business, what impact did you make? How did the business grow from where you joined to the point you are leaving? Now, where were you and where are you currently, assuming you're still in that business at the point, right? So growth is actually, like Mr. Femi said, is beyond money. If you find out you're doing the same thing like he said, you are not growing. So for me, in my 21 years, I had the opportunity to address various challenges. There were real challenging situations that I was faced with, and you resolved them and didn't drag down the business. Because at some point I was in a position where one mistake could have pulled down everybody, really and truly. I was in a position where one mistake could cause a whole lot of loss, financial loss, and loss of reputation, loss of brand images, and all of that. So because I was able to navigate all of that, that was growth for me.
Sure.
Not necessarily that I was paid
more.
I got more money. Yeah, I got more money.
That you were growing as well.
Of course, I was growing as well. I got more money. I was even growing in age after.
Of course, after all, yeah.
I was even growing in age, right? So growth, it is, like I said, is beyond money. And it has its two ways. The person, the talent, how have you identified growth? I was able to grow into the point that a time came when I was meant to be deployed to a higher role. A lot of persons that didn't know the growth history of both the business and me as a person were saying, no, don't give her, make it open. Do you think she can achieve? Yeah, we have seen what she's doing, but make it open. And some people did a write-up about me, right? And it was read. And they saw that beyond me growing as a person, I joined an organization when there was no structure, barely, not necessarily outrightly no structure. There was, of course, but there were, now you could see some audits, some controls here and there. There were no such controls at that point. You were exposed to a lot of things, but you could handle. That was for me growth. And for the organization, I knew where we were. I got the branch I was at that time. We were on one rented small apartment. We were able to get a place. We built. We had expansions in the units. In the unit where I was, we had thousands of. The growth was enormous. Everybody saw it. So you don't question whether actually there was growth for me and for the organization. So, but what we're having currently, most businesses, I must say, are particularly interested about the growth in the organization. That's why most talents now leave. And that was what kept me longer. Because when I came out, even when I joined my business, they were asking me, please tell us, what was it that they were doing right that someone like you could stay for so long?
Yeah.
And this was one of the things that made me stay, because I was growing. I wasn't stagnated. I wasn't stunted in growth, right? So most young people, you have to develop your plans and strategy to not only help make them grow your business, you have to make them see growth in themselves. Like Mr. Femi said, that person that came in as, an unskilled person had all the opportunity. But if you allow some people, they won't do that. So it's also the duty, and that's why every manager should have some HR experience, some people management experience. You should know that this person in my team, you're not where you are supposed to be. Go and get something. It got to a point I was buying jam forms for some of my team members.
Yeah.
I have a cleaner in my former branch that is a master's degree as we speak.
Absolutely.
And now sits as a unit head.
So if you now talk about retention, and the person has been 10 years, 15 years in the organization, that is, something we should applaud, because not 10, 15 years making tea.
Nothing. Yeah.
Right? So, yes, you started by making tea, but today you are head of unit, you are head of department, so there is growth. Retention without growth, sincerely, is like imprisonment, as far as I'm concerned.
It's not even valuable.
Yeah, it's totally invaluable. Yeah.
I think our time is fast spent, but now, we always like to talk about on Workplace Whispers, one whisper, one secret for that manager, that CEO listening, that would turn or 10x their unit or their team in today's economy, today's work economy.
If you want your people to stay and build your organization with you, then give them a reason to grow themselves.
What if the talent doesn't want to grow, doesn't
then
see
it's not right for you? It's as simple as that.
I tell you, everyone that is alive would like to grow. Where I worked before I joined Gopside Global Limited, right? That was a very good talent that we had. The head of a unit, he had done less than 1 year with the business. And then he saw how one or two persons left, one or two persons that had stayed long were treated. And he felt, I didn't like the way they were treated, so I can't stay longer. He said it to me one-on-one. He said, Uche, see, this is how this one or two persons were treated. It's not right.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, even if they deserved what they got, even if they weren't, but I don't think I want to be treated this way, and so I don't intend to stay longer.
But of course, that person knows his worth.
Yes.
So because if somebody doesn't know their worth, they can't come forward and say that this is not right for me. So knowing your worth is also critical.
And funny enough, Nigerian talents these days, they know their worth.
Yeah. Mostly, not all.
Most Nigerian talents know their worth. Yeah. So people management should be key.
People management
embedded into the culture from point one. And at the point of hiring, you have to communicate what you believe, communicate your lifestyle as an organization. which has to be, a lot on people growth. That's where they will be retained. And then at exit, mind how you manage your exiting employees, because they're outside, they don't have anything to lose anymore. They can say anything they want to say about it. So it's important to manage that entire business process. Thank you.
It's been a very, very robust conversation here on Workplace Whispers. It's always a pleasure to be here. I think that's where we draw the curtains.
Yeah, another week we'll be here.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much, man, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for listening to this episode. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share with your friends, your network, most especially your colleagues as well. Until the next episode, it's Workplace Whispers.